Greetings, Montana, and hello, world. It's Chris Hislop here with day 3 of International Careers Week. I have the pleasure of going all around this great state, talking with teachers and students, with our expert speakers, ambassadors, diplomats, and internationalists from all over the world. One of the most common questions we get from students is, how did you get the job that you have? So in order to satisfy that curiosity, we've brought an extraordinary array of international experts into your classrooms, into your homes, into your workplaces, so you can learn a little bit more about the opportunities available for international work. We've talked to people who are here in Montana, people who are in the United States, and people who are around the world in different kinds of work: private sector, the military, nonprofits, the UN, diplomacy, you name it, we're covering it. So if you have an interest in international work, this is definitely the place to be this week. Let me quickly thank our very generous sponsors who help us bring this to you at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation: Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, High Stakes Foundation, and the Longview Foundation. Now let me introduce our guest. Topher Mongeon is with Doctors Without Borders. He's an American citizen with more than 15 years experience in administrative and operations management, and has a dedication to humanitarian work domestically and internationally. He's designed, implemented, and monitored programs and projects in complex international environments such as Ukraine, South Sudan, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ghana. He currently manages employee relations for Doctors Without Borders based in New York City. Topher, good morning. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me here to speak.
Well, we couldn't be happier, Topher, because we've got a lot of interest across our state in international careers, but particularly in the kinds of work that Doctors Without Borders does. It is, of course, extremely timely, and at some point we should touch on the earthquake, the very tragic earthquake in southern Turkey and in northern Syria, and the kind of work that is done there. But maybe you could kick it off telling us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and how you got there.
Yes, absolutely. So as many of you probably know, Doctors Without Borders is an organization where we're bringing professional medical care to context and locations where there is a gap in healthcare, or it's that gap is caused either by economic causes, conflict, war, natural disasters, natural hazards. And so we're operating currently in 40 different countries, having projects all having projects all over the world, where we're assisting in different types of activities, whether it's a nutritional program or looking at chronic long-term diseases, or an emergency response, much like the one happening in Turkey now. And so really just bringing the base is bringing these medical professionals to these locations, making sure that that support and that gap of healthcare is covered when that happens in an acute crisis. Of course, some emergencies, they go on for a long time. Some projects we've had open for 15 years in refugee camps, where that gap of coverage is never able to be covered by anybody other than an NGO. And so this is what MSF is doing all over the world. And the name MSF being the French acronym for Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. And so even in the name Doctors Without Borders, and in our motto and what we do is bringing that professional medical help to populations around the world. There's so much more, so much beyond being a medical professional that we need in order to implement these projects, programs throughout. So as you heard from my bio, I am not medically trained in any way. I don't have a medical background. It's in administration, finance, HR, as well as operations management. Because in the running of anything, you're going to have that expertise in that medical piece, but you need people who will pay your staff. You need people who will construct your latrines in your hospitals. You need people who will do all of the pieces around providing that support, making it safe, making sure that the facilities that they have are working, making sure that the staff is trained and able to do that work. You need all of that support in order for the beneficiaries to receive the best care. And so this is kind of how I found my place within Doctors Without Borders. In a previous life now, maybe 20 years ago, I started, I started in dining services, right? I started in high school as a dishwasher and worked my way up little by little, working in collegiate college dining services. And I got to a point in my life where, I was working quite a bit, maybe 60, 70 hours, really dedicated, increasing level by level, but realizing that maybe this is not the ultimate purpose that I want for the rest of my career. At which point I took a step back and I looked at what other options there were. I've always liked to travel internationally, but it's very hard to break into that international career path without having international work experience, right? And so there's always a balance of trying to prove or trying to show or trying to have a history of working abroad before you're able to enter this international sphere. Luckily, I was able to join the Peace Corps, which is a very great program, which is open to a lot of college graduates. The ability to go and work and live abroad in a culture and a context that's very foreign to you, very unique, and your ability to manage and work and perform and share your culture is a huge piece of experience that's not only great for you individually, but also great for kind of a resume or moving forward. And so it was after my 3 years with Peace Corps that finally I had both that administrative and operations management for my work in dining services and that international, that proof of international experience that I'm able to work and live and make projects work in developing or underdeveloped countries. And so with those two combined, I was able to then put out my resume for larger organizations, big name organizations like Medicine Sans Frontier or ICRC, Save the Children, all of these great organizations as well, and be able to find my place where I have a career helping and supporting the teams that we put in place to make sure that as many beneficiaries as possible can access healthcare.
Thanks a lot for that, Topher. I'm just going to point out it's really interesting to hear your background because it's not unlike other people we spoke with. And this point is that your background is not medical, not necessarily, at least originally international, yet you found a path that led you into an international career. And so time and again, students have been asking our guests, do I need to be an international relations expert? Do I need to be a doctor? And time and again, the answer is no, because organizations like MSF, the US State Department, the UN, they're looking for a diversity of talents. And so it's not necessarily one particular thing. So thanks for bringing that out. Now, I'm going to remind our participants, please use this opportunity to chat in questions to Topher. It's a very unique opportunity to ask him the kinds of questions that you have. But in the meantime, I have a question for you. We know that MSF works all over the world in many different situations, not the least of which is some dangerous situations in conflict. Can you talk a little bit about how you mitigate threat to your staff and how one works in places that are in conflict or may pose a certain threat or danger?
Yeah, certainly. I think that, you can't eliminate all risk wherever you go. And I think part of what Doctors Without Borders is known for is their ability and willingness to go in these situations where there is a high insecurity context or there is current conflict going on. And so in my experience, working in South Sudan, where there is often intercommunal conflicts going on all the time, shooting, warfare, these types of issues. My work in Ukraine, which was before this most recent aggression from Russia, but still at the time where parts of the country had been annexed and trying to make sure that we are serving those people who are kind of caught in that political dispute. So in these situations, we're there because nobody else is either willing or able to go in these locations, and we're not going to eliminate the possibility of an accidental shooting, a kidnapping, some bombing or shelling that would go on. But what we can do is mitigate those risks. And, we have a great team I, in my last assignment in Sudan, was working on part of a team as well, where we do the assessment of security. And what we use, what our biggest strength is really building that relationship with the community, right? No matter if you have outside aggressors or community violence or anything like this, the community realizes the worth that Doctors Without Borders brings, right? This medical professional, the children that we're delivering, the lives that we're saving. And so they don't want us to leave, and they never feel like they want us to feel insecure or ever have the excuse or be forced to make the decision to go. And so our biggest protector is that acceptance of the community, and they're acting as our buffer to any kind of outside aggressor, any outside issue. But then there's, of course, other types of mitigation processes, and it's communication, speaking with governments, making sure that everybody understands the purpose of why we're there, and making sure that the people who are going, they understand the risk and that they feel safe and that they have been trained and well aware of how to mitigate the risk themselves as well.
Thanks for that, Topher. We're getting some questions in from our students. This comes from Ms. Cote's class in Gardner, Montana. Can you elaborate more on your time in Peace Corps, how you ended up there, and some experiences you had while involved?
Absolutely. So Peace Corps was a wonderful experience for me. Actually, every sibling I have, my two sisters, they both joined Peace Corps as well. And so we're a whole family of Peace Corps volunteers, and we all joined at different times in our life. And this is part of the beauty of Peace Corps, that my sisters, they joined a little bit after college or a couple of years after college. I joined once I was 30. In my Peace Corps experience, there were people who are 40, 50, people who had been retired and came in. And so I think oftentimes you think of Peace Corps as young professionals going to help build bridges or to provide some specific type of care, but really it's an organization to make sure that we're spreading culture, that we're bringing assistance to people who need it, that we're able to identify funding opportunities and bring that to the communities that we're serving in. So I personally went to Ghana, which is in West Africa. I spent about a year and a half working in a community, working with business or income generating activities, right? And so we were in a place where we didn't have a whole lot of land for farming. And so trying to come up with unique creative solutions to that land issue, whether it's, encouraging people to become poultry farmers or mushroom farmers or bee farmers, where you can still generate income and provide support to that community without using all of that land. And so doing projects like that, and then hand in hand with those, using that money to also build latrines for the schools, build new boreholes to make sure that the drinking water was clean, and overall improve the health of the community that I was in. The second year and a half, I partnered with another NGO called ADVI VOCA, where I was a communication specialist, and we were, again, assisting farmers with providing better seeds, better equipment for farming of maize or corn. And so going around and showing the work that ACDI VOCA was doing, presenting that, taking photos, and having kind of a social media campaign to show this work that we're doing and the support that, and how it helped the farmers themselves.
Well, that is super cool and amazing work. And I say that because I'm also a former Peace Corps volunteer, and that it's, for those of you watching, a very common pathway into an international career is spending a couple of years in the Peace Corps, learning cultural and language skills, and then launching off into the world. So give that a look. And by the way, for those of you who are interested in Peace Corps, tomorrow at 9:30 a.m., the director of the U.S. Peace Corps, Carol Spahn, is going to join us here on our webcast to tell us more. So thanks that was a nice taster there, Topher. So we're thinking about it. A great question, Gardner. Come on, people out there, ask more questions, because I've got a ton of them, but you get bored of me asking all the questions. Here's a question for you, Topher. Is there such thing as a usual day for a humanitarian or somebody working in Doctors Without Borders? If so, what might it look like?
Yeah, I think that's a challenging question to ask. As mentioned, there's just so many different profiles or job families that we have, and there's so many different types of people that we have working in the field or on a project, right? And so that your day-to-day as a medical doctor will probably be a little bit more structured as you're helping patients, and we have the inflow of patients, but the types of issues or conditions that you see, they will be unique on a day-to-day basis. You have logisticians, their days are usually, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe one day somebody broke into the compound and they have to review the security protocol, do a retraining of the guards. Maybe the incinerator is broken and now we don't have a place to put our medical waste. And so they're coming up with some kind of solution, or a generator is broken, or a car is stuck in the mud. And so for a logistician, they have a day that is really dictated by the events of the day and not by themselves. For me, I was a HR finance person and then a project coordinator. As a HR and finance, it's typical. You'll wake up in your tukul or your living conditions, whether it's a tukul or a small house or a little cement structure. You'll make your maybe 2-minute walk to the compound where you have the hospital and the offices. Greeting staff, having morning meetings. A lot of that work, that administrative work, is still done on the computer with the internet. All of that, so making sure that the paperwork is in order, that we're following the labor laws of the country, making sure that the accounting is all done appropriately and correctly. And so at certain points, it does really seem like a little bit of an office job, but just located in a new environment, in a unique environment. And so the best part of that is really being able to engage with the staff, the local people that we have hired to do a lot of the work. 90-95% of our staff are coming from the countries in which we're actually working, and only 5% are what you might consider international staff coming from the global north, going to different countries to help support those projects. And then as a project coordinator, this is much like a logistician, but more in a kind of networking management, right? You're maybe meeting with the community, you're maybe meeting with the leader of the people in the refugee camp, trying to come up with solutions, meeting with the government, and making sure that, the safety is there and that the acceptance is there. And so these will change day to day, but yeah, the experience is certainly unique depending on what position you're doing and what country you're in.
So, Topher, we've got some more questions coming in from the students, but I just want to tack on to this last one. There's been a very horrible earthquake in southern Turkey and in northern Syria. Now, MSF has a range of staff doing many different things, but are primarily known also as care providers, healthcare, medicine, and so on. What does it look like for a medical professional on the ground in southern Turkey today? What would that person be doing?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think we're still ramping up our process and we're sending teams to get there. What is going to happen immediately is that we're going to set up some temporary structures or take over some hospitals that are maybe not functioning because the equipment or the materials are gone, but the facility itself is good. And so we'll try and work with the community and find a location to set up. And in these beginning days, it will be a lot of triage. It will be a lot of, supporting people who are injured, who have these injuries from the natural disaster, trying to get them repaired in a way. And then after that comes a lot of work of the rebuilding, right? Making sure that the infrastructure is rebuilt back to where it needs to be, that the long-term issues of crises like this, and something that you see in Haiti quite often is there's the earthquake, but what kills more people is the cholera after, right? And so then it becomes a matter of health promotion and really being more on a preventative care mindset. And so, today what you would see is us in either temporary structures or in facilities still standing, trying to see patients and triaging them as we still see the victims of the earthquake come in.
Topher, here are some more structural questions, again, coming from Gardner. I'm going to ask you all of them, and then you can roll through them. Part one, how does MSF get funding? And then part two is just looking at the breakdown of your staffing. What percentage of staff is permanent? What percentage are volunteers? And you've already told us, nearly 95% of staff are nationals of the country or the place where you work. That's an interesting thing. So funding, regular staff, volunteers.
Yeah. So MSF is unique in this way that we don't accept funding from any government organization, right? USAID or ECHO, which is the European version of kind of the European aid. Uh, MSF, we really pride ourselves on being independent. So anytime that you receive money from a large government organization, there are oftentimes strings attached, right? That we will give you this money, but maybe we want you to work in this location, or we want you to do this type of project in a certain locations. Sometimes our philosophies align, and sometimes they deviate. But MSF has learned in its last 50 years that it's best that we only accept funding that is considered private funding, funding with no kind of conditions or strings attached to it, right? So even when we do funding campaigns, say, for example, Ukraine, when this was an issue that was happening and we're asking for funding for supporting Ukraine, at a certain point, we got too much money, right? We received such an outpouring of support, it was great. And what we had to do is go back to all of our donors and say, I know that you donated $100 to help Ukraine. I want to tell you that Ukraine has all the money that MSF could spend in Ukraine. MSF, we already have that money. We're good for years and years to come. Is it okay if we take that $100 and redistribute it to other projects and other locations that we need? So in this sense, we try not to take any money that has any kind of strings attached to it. And when they do, or when we ask for money for a specific purpose, and we know that money will not be used for that purpose, we inform the donor and we ask permission to reuse that funding. And so 98% of our funding is from private donors. And this could be anybody from, my mother's contributing $25 every quarter and her company is matching that, to larger corporations who are, part of their major donor giving and giving large amounts of money every year. So MSF USA, as MSF or Doctors Without Borders is kind of broken up regionally. MSF USA has a headquarters here in New York. And so we, try to attract donors in the US. MSF Canada will attract donors in Canada, and so on and so forth throughout the world. But we're really, looking for people who are willing to contribute small amounts, maybe monthly, and just making sure that we're not taking any money that would interfere with our ability to independently decide where we go, what we do, and how long we stay.
Topher, since you're a HR professional, I think you're in a great position to answer this next question, which is a question in two parts. Could you tell us what kind of qualities, characteristics, or profiles in general, MSF, or maybe if I could even generalize for humanitarian organizations, what are they looking for in people? What kind of qualities can students cultivate in order to, explore these kinds of opportunities? And the second part of the question is, could you talk about the concrete steps one could take in order to get a job in an international humanitarian organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to go back. I think there was a part two of the last question that I never got
Oh
to.
yeah, you're so right. Sorry, permanent versus volunteers.
Yeah. And yeah, so I can give you maybe just a snapshot example. In my last assignment, it was in Sudan. We had a team of 200 people, right? I would say of that 200 people, 195 of them were Sudanese, right? Half of those people were refugees coming from South Sudan, or maybe they had lived in Sudan before the war. And then the other half were people living and working in Sudan. Of the other 5 people, we were all what we consider to be international staff. And so we are kind of on a permanent/temporary basis, right? We will go to an assignment for 6 months, 1 year, but then we will leave and we'll come back home, take a break, and go back out. And of those 5 people, I think that I was the only individual from the global north, right? And then everybody else being found regionally or from different locations, right? Whether it's from Kenya, we had somebody from Senegal, from Burkina Faso, so people from the region, but these were international staff coming to Sudan to help support that assignment. And so we would say probably about 5% that could be considered to be temporary, or what we call them is mobile, right? People that will move back and forth to different assignments and different projects. But then what MSF does not do for the most part is that we do not have any volunteers, right? All of our staff are considered to be employees. Keeping in mind that the salary of a MSF staff or MSF field worker is very low. And so certainly when you're a doctor or surgeon in the US making a little bit higher of a salary, and you come and work for MSF where we have a very, very low salary, it can be considered to be volunteer work or kind of a donation. And oftentimes people will take that salary and donate it back to MSF because this is not, but for, legal purposes and everything else, all of our staff are considered to be fully employed.
Okay, great. So let's jump to this next one, just looking at different qualities that humanitarian organizations are looking for in staff generally, and then any concrete steps one can take in order to explore more seriously this work.
Yeah, I think that what we look for and what everybody looks for, or what most people look for in this international field, is really a passion for being international, whether it's traveling or working abroad, whether it's knowing a second language. This ability, this kind of proof or experience where you are able to go internationally, that you enjoy it, that you have a passion for that, you like to exchange with cultures, keeping in mind, right, you're going to go to a community where you're going to be the outlier, right? And so you need to be able to adapt and be flexible and understand the culture that you're in and the rules and the norms of that culture. And this is really what we're looking for as far as that personal trait of your ability to go to a new location and be flexible enough that you can adapt to the way that things are managed in that project. And then, of course, professional experience, depending on what job family you're going for. If you're from a medical background, if you're from a medical background, we ask for 2 to 3 years of experience, or logisticians or admin and finance, just some experience in one of these fields in which we need in order to run the operations. And so this is what we're really looking for when a person has both of those, right? That ability to show that they can work internationally and some expertise in the field that they're working from. This is really what we're looking for when we're bringing staff on. Concrete steps to do that. And like I said, if you follow a path line like mine, I was just following my kind of corporate ladder job to the point where I realized that my passion was not that, right? My passion was working internationally. I followed my passion, and I was very lucky to have been able to find a position that has both my expertise and my passion aligned in one.
Outstanding. We've got a few more questions and a few more minutes, Topher.
Absolutely.
Question is, how many different countries are represented by Doctors Without Borders, and what does communication across different offices look like? I'll just jump in there and say, maybe in both regards, where you are working, and then also the national chapters of MSF to describe that briefly.
Yeah, so there are what we consider 6 major operational centers, and 5 of them are in Europe, and then 1 of them is in Senegal. It's called the West African Center, and these are the kind of the headquarters for people running operations or projects in the field. And then what we have is 26 partners, and the partners, what they'll do is they'll do the communication in their country, they'll do fundraising in their country, and they'll also recruit for human resources in their country to then be sent to the projects, right? And so MSF USA, we don't run any operations, but we are a partnership section, doing all 3 of those, much like Canada, Japan, MSF Mexico. So this is kind of how we all then funnel to our operational centers who are in Europe, and then they redistribute the team and the HR to the field projects and the funding as well. And they also support with the communications and the messaging on how we want to speak to. We're kind of a representative for our own country, so making sure that our communication lines and how we approach subjects are in line with the cultural norms.
Topher, next question is, how many languages can you speak? And I'll add another point here is, do you have to speak a foreign language to do the work of an international aid worker?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I speak 1 language. Some days my English is very good, some days it's not. I was an English major. I do speak 3 languages partially I can kind of understand or get the sense, and this is French, Spanish, and Twi, which was a language in Ghana. But in reality, I think that it's very difficult or it's very hard to have that expectation that no matter what country you'll go to, that you'll be able to speak that either national or even that local language. And so there isn't a strong requirement to be able to operate or to be able to work in a foreign language where you're working. So that being said, MSF itself, usually we have 3 to 4 languages that a project would be considered to be that main language, right? So oftentimes that project would be English. Sometimes if it's in a French context or a West African country, it's going to be French, right? We have enough French international staff and enough French, and then in the country, the national language is French, that we can keep that mission language to be French, right? And then Arabic, and then as we expand and look at more opportunities in Mexico and Central America, we have organizations that are their mission language, or what we would call the assignment language, would be Spanish, right? And so you don't necessarily need to know a foreign language. Like when I was in Ukraine, nobody's, we as a project or an assignment, we didn't speak Ukrainian in our day-to-day work. Our common language is English, right? And the same with South Sudan and Sudanese. We were not necessarily speaking Arabic, but we're speaking English in our day-to-day work and then communicating outside in Arabic and using translators for that.
Thanks a lot for that, Topher, and thanks for giving us insight into your world, the world of international humanitarian aid and Doctors Without Borders, and another excellent session. I'm going to remind viewers that if you're interested in the CIA and international security and intelligence, our next guest, Deb Bonk, is the person for you. She's going to be talking about that, followed by sessions on world trade. And then we have a private sector person who works in advertising. So if you're interested in international careers in the private sector, that's for you. We're going to wrap up this afternoon with Ambassador Ted Osius. He's a former U.S. ambassador and now leading an organization within ASEAN, the Asian regional organization. He's going to talk to you about diplomacy and other opportunities in Asia. And then tomorrow, I mentioned Carol Spahn, the Peace Corps director. In fact, we have another international humanitarian NGO working primarily here in the United States with refugees at the International Rescue Committee. So you might be interested in that as well. Do join us. So let me just quickly, before signing off, thank our very generous sponsors at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, High Stakes Foundation, and Longview Foundation. And of course, Topher Mongeon from Doctors Without Borders. Thank you so much, Topher, for joining us today. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, everybody, be well. See you in the next session. Bye-bye.